thank you all for attending this DABCC Live. And what DABCC Live is a webinar series that I put on from DABCC, and I invite customers on that I'm really looking forward to learning more about and sharing that information with you guys. Today we have one of my favorite customers, one of my favorite companies out there, Virtual Computer. Virtual Computer makes what they call intelligent desktop virtualization. You might hear it be coined client hypervisors or client virtualization. I call it a lot. And they have their technology is called NxTop. And I don't want to go too much into what these guys do. Tom will do that. But as you know, as you might know if you followed me, my writings, my speaking, my podcasts in the past, I love client virtualization. I really think it brings virtualization to the final frontier, the endpoint, the client piece. And we're not stopping at the application, or we're not virtualizing on top of the OS. And there's many reasons why this is amazing. Tom will go into some of those today. But we're also going to dive deep into this technology too, and Tom can do that. So, guys, if you have any questions at all, please question piece, and we'll go into, and I will ask Tom those questions. I'll be the question moderator. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tom. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, presenting. I'm really excited about this, as always. Can you just do a brief introduction of yourself? Who are you and what you do over at Virtual Computer? And then let's dive into this. Sound good?
Sounds good, Doug. So my name is Tom Reed. I'm the Director of Systems Engineering here at Virtual Computer. Virtual Computer is based over in the Boston, Mass area, which, as I like to explain to Doug, is the city of champions. And we're based over here in Boston, Massachusetts. We are the market leader in intelligent desktop virtualization. Mainly our product NxTop, the client-side hypervisor, which really enables you to manage PCs more effectively using virtualization as a tool. So what we're going to kind of talk about today is a little bit about the space, about the options you have for desktop virtualization. We're going to talk specifically how we handle certain aspects of desktop virtualization. And then we're also going to show NxTop, both server and client side, to really show you the power of intelligent desktop virtualization using the NxTop client-side hypervisor, and how you can really gain some of the management capabilities and really take back control of your current environment that you may have lost control of over the years. And we'll explain why, potentially you've lost control of your environment. So really, what is desktop virtualization? At a very basic explanation, desktop virtualization is decoupling the desktop image from underlying hardware. It's separation of the image from the hardware. You compute where it makes sense, and you're trying to gain a better end-user experience. One of the nice features about decoupling the OS from the hardware is the flexibility you gain. The ability to have every endpoint look the exact same in your environment. The ability to consolidate the amount of driver stores and images that you have to maintain on the back end. And then obviously, you want to be able to do that without compromising the end-user experience. It's really all about your customers. Your customers are your end users. Their experience needs to be as good as it is when they sit down natively. If you think way back, many years ago now, going back to 2007, the big promises about VDI and how it's going to deliver specific things, it delivered on one aspect, and that was centralized management. It didn't really deliver on the end-user experience. We're going to talk more about that. One of the nice things here about desktop virtualization is you got a couple of approaches. You have the VDI approach. The VDI approach is very straightforward and very simple. You have centralized management. The ability, again, to separate the operating system from the hardware, the ability to centrally control that, the ability to grant access and rights on who gets what virtual machine, and again, the ability to really lock it down and take back control. What people really started to understand as it evolved more and more in the space is VDI is simply centralized execution, which has its downfalls. It has its downfalls on one key area, end-user experience. It has a downfall in portability. I can't take my laptop and get on a plane and be able to work on my VDI session because I don't have a network connection. Okay? I'm increasing server sprawl in the back end. That's a big thing that everybody tried to really get away from when they started to go into, the days of let's virtualize all of our servers. Over time, people went from tons of physical servers to few physical servers, lots of virtual machines. And that became the sprawl concern that we have today in the data center. So now you start to tack on running all of your user desktops. Now you're tacking on a lot of storage, a lot of virtual machines, and then you've got to start to think about things like voice over IP, USB headphones to connect to my soft phone to be able to use my soft phone on my voice over IP system. Then you've got to start to think about your network capacity as a whole. So there's a lot of different things that you have to think about when you're looking at VDI as your desktop virtualization solution. This introduces a lot of complexity. The second approach to really talk about is IDV. IDV introduces something new. Introduces local execution. Local execution coupled with centralized management seems like a dream. All of a sudden, we don't have to worry about our network capacity. We don't have to worry about our users that have to get on planes or travel with their laptops not being able to take their work with them. We don't have to worry about VM server sprawl. We don't have to worry about storage sprawl. We don't have to worry about end-user experience. They're going to get the same experience they get with a native PC as soon as they sit down at their desk, because we're locally executing the virtual machine, but we're giving you that great benefit that VDI introduced of centralized management, which is great. So now, again, the complexity becomes much, much easier. We're saying a couple of servers can handle hundreds of thousands of users. We're not getting into massive storage banks, massive VM server sprawl. IDV is 1/20th of the cost in terms of the infrastructure. It's very interesting. You don't have to have management servers. You don't have to have massive storage arrays, tons of execution servers, and then you don't have to go ahead and work on that network gear. Oh, and then also you're not going to have to start to server sprawl as you go back out on the back end on your VM farms. All that kind of goes away, and you're stuck with just a couple of management servers. Because the execution is taking place locally, you're using the local hardware, using the local video card, the local CPU, memory, all those resources. You're not tying up server box after server box, VM after VM of just leveraging shared hardware. You're leveraging local hardware and simply managing them like you pretty much traditionally manage your PCs today without the benefit of the virtualization. You look at a typical 1,000 endpoint deployment. The server requirement for server-hosted VDI, 20 servers. Client-hosted IDV, 1. The storage requirement, 50 terabytes of Tier 1 storage. You've got to have fast storage, fast disk. We hear so much about IOPS planning when you're planning VDI deployments. But when you look at an IDV deployment, you really only need 15 terabytes of Tier 3 storage. This could be, a low-end, entry-level iSCSI array with slower disk. All it's doing is housing your images and housing your end-user data backup. It's not executing anything, so you're not worried about IOPS. You're not worried about how much IOPS can this array handle. It doesn't matter with IDV, so it all goes away. What about network upgrades? More than likely, you're going to need a network upgrade with VDI. You're going to have to say, I'm going to have to increase my gigabit down to my desktops. Maybe you have gigabit on the server, but you don't have it to every desk. Maybe you have to start to look at, do I increase that stuff? How can I do this effectively? More importantly, my outside pipe, can it handle 60, 70, 80 connections? How about remote offices? Do my remote offices have enough power on my MPLS cloud to come back, enough pipe to come back over the cloud and come into my farm? Is that possible? Client-hosted VDI, it's not required because you're not building a connection to execute and run your day's events on your servers over your network. Again, once that VM is pushed down on that initial push, it lives and executes locally. How about licensing? Microsoft, in their wisdom, introduced VDA licensing. For those of you that aren't familiar with VDA licensing was a way for Microsoft to track deployments of Windows desktop operating systems inside of VDI. So it's now a tax. I believe it's $100, Doug, if I'm not mistaken there. But it's a $100 tax per virtual machine. So now, not only do I have to have volume licensing, but I also have to pay an additional $100 tax to run these inside of my data center. Well, that can add up if you're talking, 1,000 machines. If you're talking 100 machines, it adds up as well. When you look at client-hosted IDV, it's not required because we're leveraging your existing volume license or even your OEM license that you've already paid for, and there's no need for VDA tax on top of that. Security and management, they kind of both do it for you, right? One of those things, centralized management, both options have that. Both options have great security. Endpoint device cost, again, both have low-end, entry-level device costs that you can leverage to really enjoy both technologies and support your users with the native experience that they're looking for on IDV and in less than native but a low-cost device in server-hosted VDI. How about laptop support? And this is a big one. I'm one of those guys. I'm on the road a lot. I take my laptop wherever I go. I don't have to find a network connection to connect to my VDI session when I take my laptop on the road. I've been in meeting rooms where you can't get wireless, you can't get online. So I need a presentation that's back in the office or something of that nature. Doesn't matter. I have it right there on my laptop because my operating system runs locally that I work in daily. I don't have to check in and check out, try and shut down before, after my 20-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute checkout is done. All that goes away. Server-hosted VDI, you have to have that connection. Complexity. Really kind of talked a lot about complexity. And I can't stress the complexity enough. Prior to joining Virtual Computer, I did a lot of Citrix and VMware deployments, a lot of NxTop, a lot of View deployments. It's actually how Doug and I met about 10 years ago now. And I'll tell you, the complexity around VDI designs, it's extremely complex. You have to really take into account every single thing that all of your users are doing, and you really have to take into account things that you never thought you would before. IOPS, network capacity, switching capacity, things of that nature. Then when you start to get into remote offices, you got to start to say, I'm going to have to put some WAN accelerators in place. I'm going to have to start to look at maybe tiered storage outside of that data center, things of that nature. And when you really start to carve it all up and sit down and look at it, in my days of consulting, I've seen, extensive 300-400 page design documents around VDI. The complexity is really big. When you look at the complexity of an IDV deployment, client-hosted virtualization, it's not nearly as complex. You don't have to really look at the network and say, am I going to have to upgrade my network from 100 meg to gigabit on my desktops? Am I going to have to look at doing things like server storage upgrades to tier 1 fast disk? Am I going to calculate IOPS? Those things all go away because the execution is local. And I'm going to continue to stress that because I think a lot of people look at the overall cost of these things and they say, well, from a CapEx perspective, VDI is expensive, but I save in additional areas elsewhere. I can go to thin clients and things like that. Absolutely, with VDI, you can go to thin clients, but then you suffer on the last bullet point here, end user performance. A thin client will never be a PC. It will never give you the flexibility of a PC. It will never give you the graphics, the speed, the real look and feel of a user, day-to-day operations on it. When I go home and I use a native PC, I don't feel the difference when I come into work the next morning when I use my client-hosted IDV PC. I feel the exact same way. I move in it the same way. I don't say, oh, no, I have to use that slow PC today. It's as quick as my native PC. It's as reliable as my native PC, and my experience is the exact same. So that's a big thing is end-user performance when looking at the two different ways you can get into desktop virtualization. So how did we go ahead, Doug.
I would also add you don't need a second desktop. One of, dating back to, the early days of Citrix before we had application seamless apps, seamless windows, right?
Mm-hmm.
You with double desktops. You have your local desktop, and okay, you come into this virtual or this published desktop, and then they gave us VDI. Well, now we have another desktop. I don't want another desktop. I want my one. I come in, I sit down in front of my machine, and I work. I don't have to go from this desktop to this desktop. If I need a second desktop, I'll use seamless windows. You know what I mean? I think that's one of the huge benefits, too. I agree with everything you said, obviously, because those are the pain points. But this is also a real pain point for end users because they get confused, and it creates help desk calls, and it just is confusing. I don't want any of that.
And that's a fantastic point, Doug. You're saying from an end user perspective how difficult that is. Now think about it from an IT administrator. On Patch Tuesdays, I'm now patching 2 desktops per user. I'm patching the one that they're connecting to, and I'm patching the one that's locally. So you're dealing with a lot of elements there, absolutely. And from a help desk perspective, we've all seen it where the user's desktop changes or they can't find something and they launch a call. You know, there's the old story about the CEO who you had to rename his Outlook icon to say email because he didn't know where to look for it. And that's what drives end user calls to the help desk. Absolutely.
Oh, I saw it 1,000 times when we were doing early deployments. And once seamless windows came around, people were like, oh, okay, yeah. I just click on this, and at that point, they didn't even know it was Citrix, which is exactly what it should be. They should just come to work. I've always said no employees other than IT people wake up in the morning and say, gee, I can't wait to use that new Cisco router we bought, or gee, I can't wait to use my computer. That's not what they care about. They're like, oh, I got to go and use Excel, or I got to make this. They don't even say Excel. They say, I got to go make a PowerPoint today, or gosh, I got to make this spreadsheet for my boss. They don't care, right? They just want to do their work. They want it to be fast. They want it to be easy, simple, and then IT wants everything that you talked about too. And to me, that's what intelligent desktop virtualization brings to you, this idea of client virtualization, of virtualizing the final endpoints. And I think that's, at the end of the day, one of the most important pieces. But please continue.
That's a great key point, Doug. I made a comment at the very start about the mess that a lot of people are in today. And I think, Doug, you and I have had this conversation a lot of times. Windows XP came out in 2001. Somewhere along the way, they came out with Windows Vista, which not a lot of people really went to. We didn't see a lot of corporate-wide deployments of Windows Vista. Then they took the good stuff of Vista, the very few good things of Vista, and the stability of XP, and they put them together to form Windows 7, almost 11 years later. That's interesting, because in that time frame, all of a sudden we had users that had the flexibility of becoming a local administrator. They had the flexibility to install such great applications as WeatherBug, the ability to install pretty much anything they wanted that could bring your network to a screeching halt, or they would crash their PC so bad they'd call IT help desk and say, please reformat my drive and reinstall everything from scratch. We've heard horror stories of field sales reps that have had to mail back in their laptops, and it takes a 2 to 3 day turnaround to rebuild it, get it back to where it is, hope the user saved their data on a network share someplace, and then ship it back to them. So today's PCs, they're really glued together. Everything's just mix-mashed in there. One of the great things is the software vendors out there, when they couldn't figure their own permissions out that are needed inside of Windows to run their own application, they would say, make the user a local admin, and then go ahead and try it. And it would work. And you'd be on the phone for 6 hours, so you'd just say, that's fine, I'll just make everybody an admin. What does it matter? Well, it didn't really matter until now. And now we're seeing all of the effects of that's taken place. What something like IDV can help you do is really break them apart. Isolate that OS from the hardware. Isolate the personalization, the profile information of that user from the operating system. Isolate the applications by using third-party tools such as Microsoft AppV, Semantics Workspace Virtualization to virtualize your line of business applications and separate out your applications. And then control it all with a single policy system. So now you're saying, okay, I'm going to go from this anarchy kind of state where my users have control, the inmates running the asylum, installing whatever they want, to being able to pull out all of that control that they had and take that control from an IT administration standpoint and really isolate out the key components so that you can effectively manage your environment the way you should be managing it today.
Hallelujah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I talked about separation. How do we do the separation? How does this all happen? So I'm going to focus specifically now on how NxTop does the separation, and that's a big thing on how we do it because it is unique, and a lot of people love it, and they really see the benefit here of how we do this. So I'm going to talk to it a little bit. We ship out from our management server the VM to the endpoint. The endpoint lives and executes locally. NxTop is a Type 1 bare metal hypervisor. It is important to state that we are the market leader in Type 1 bare metal hypervisors. We are not a Type 2 bare metal or 1.5 bare metal like some of the other guys are out there where it's the VM player inside of a Linux kernel. We are a true Type 1, okay? So that system VHD comes down from the server and it lives and executes locally. That shared system disk is actually a read-only disk. Now, we create a CAL, a copy on write disk, or what we'll call for this conversation today a differential disk. So as a user, when I'm working in my session, anything that writes to the registry or to the system drive is going to write in that differential disk. Now, we do have a policy that can say, hey, when they save something to this folder on the system drive, under the covers, symbolically link it to another place. Okay, so we use Windows 7 symbolic links or Windows XP junction points under the covers. The user doesn't know this is happening, and that's important to state. To an end user, if I save something in my documents, I just go to my documents and save it there. If I save something on my desktop, to me it's on my desktop. In actuality, it's symbolically linked under the covers to this user VHD. Okay, and this user VHD maintains persistency across reboots for NxTop. But that differential disk on the system drive where the user's activity of the day that isn't being preserved is being held is actually wiped away after a reboot. What's nice about that? I'm a user. I'm working. I open up an email from Doug. Open me right away. Really cool picture. When I open it up, it drops a Trojan inside my system drive. So now I've got this Trojan living in my system drive, and what do? Well, my virus software didn't pick it up because it was a zero-day attack. I reboot. When I reboot, that was sitting on my system drive, but in actuality, it was sitting inside the differential disk. So when I reboot, it's gone. So it's like starting from scratch all over again. The other benefit to this differential disk being wiped out is everybody is the same. When everybody is the same, you can afford one of the nice management features called one-to-many patching. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we do one-to-many patching in a second, and I'm also going to talk about that user VHD and how we snapshot it and back it up because it's quite unique. The local VHD is something that actually we have as kind of a separate drive under the covers again, and this houses things like our page file, our temporary internet files, our Outlook OST. The reason we put it there is because it's persistent across reboots, which is really nice. So when it's persistent across reboots, I don't have to rebuild my Outlook cache for offline mode. But when I come in and my page files move over there and everything else is moved over there, those are recoverable things. I don't want to back up your recoverable items because it bloats my backups. So if I put them on the user VHD, which is backed up by a policy, it's going to bloat my backup. And you may have heard the term VM bloat. VM image bloat is just that. It's big in VDI because you're bloating the image with all the temporary files and all those things. Adds more complexity. You need a tool in VDI to clean that up. With IDV, we thought ahead and said, geez, we don't want to bloat the backups. We definitely don't want to change the system disk. So what do? Well, let's put it in a separate container. And again, it's all policy-driven on what can go in what container. It's very simple. So if you have homegrown applications, custom applications, that you feel, I want to maintain persistency on this folder, we can do that. Okay, very simple. So let's talk a little bit about the one-to-many patching. We use VHD disk chains. Again, I made the comment earlier about using virtualization as a tool. This is where we really use it as a great tool. And virtualization, it's a platform, it's a tool, and when you wrap things around it, such as centralized management of this tool, it becomes a very powerful tool, okay? One of the nice parts, again, is disk chaining. We're able to use the VHD disk chain, and we are in VHD format, to create a one-to-many patching chain. So we have our system VHD version 1. We push that down to 1,000 PCs. So 1,000 PCs are running our version 1, which has our applications installed that everybody gets, such as Office. You know, it has our centrally designed desktops and user profiles and all that stuff. Service Pack 1 for Windows 7 comes out. Well, I've got to install that on the golden image, so I install it in one location on the management server in the golden image, and I version it so that it's ready to go, and then it gets pushed down. Now, it becomes version 2. It gets pushed down as a block-level differential disk. It doesn't re-push the whole image down. It pushes down the block-level differential disk. So when that happens, and you reboot the machine, it boots from the top of the chain down. So it will boot from version 2 down. So now we've developed this chain, and we're working this chain. So we send a couple more updates out. We build up a chain. We get up to version 4. You know, we've got a chain that's built here. Well, we deployed version 4. Version 4 had a great patch in it for one of our applications. We tested it as best we could, and then we deployed it. So within a couple of days, users start to use the application in a different manner than how we tested. Then they start to come back with some issues. So like, what could have happened here? Then we would say, okay, well, we're getting too many calls at the help desk. We need to roll everybody back. Now, in a traditional environment, very difficult to do, right? A lot of products out there, CCM and those, can do one-to-many patching. But how about that one-to-many rollback? Take it a step further. How about one-click one-to-many rollback? And that's just what we have. So in the manager console, you do one click. We move the pointer from version 4 to version 3. The user gets a prompt that says, please reboot, a new version is available. There's no additional download time. There's nothing because version 3 is already there. When they reboot, they're rebooting into version 3. So they can roll the patch back, and you can take it offline and try and fix it and work with it and see what went wrong. Okay? We do the very same thing for our user data backup. Think of version 1 as our initial backup, version 2 as our snapshot that we did maybe 3 days later, and then version 3 we did 6 days after the first one, so 3 days after the second one. That's our third snapshot. And we can set restore points to restore those users back. So maybe they say, oh, geez, I've got a problem here. I've got to bring myself back to version 2 of my user disk, which has my documents and my app settings and things like that. We can go ahead and do that, no problem, and revert that right back, the same way we do one-to-many patching. That's kind of an overview of NxTop as a whole from a patching technical perspective of how things flow under the covers. Now, I've been on the show before with Doug many times, and I know we've all talked about version 3.0, but this year, Doug, we launched 4.0. We've got some great new features in here. I'm going to kind of show them to you in just a few minutes here, but I kind of want to talk through some of the new stuff in our 4.0 release.
Hey, Tom, before we get into this, we do have a bunch of questions. Let's take a few of these real quick. Does that sound
Absolutely.
good?
Sounds great.
Okay. So let me start from the scratch, or from the top. Now, as I ask these, if you're going to answer these in detail later with maybe a slide or within the demo, please just say I'll come back to them so that we don't have to,
Sure.
That might be a better answer for showing it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I'll go through them. How do companies back up their user data that would still be stored inside the local VM? You talked about this, but can you answer that in more detail?
Yep, absolutely. So I will show a policy on how this is actually done. But again, that user data is stored in the user VHD, and that is compressed and backed up on a policy time. And that policy can be set every day, every 3 days. And then also the policy says how long should you store it. So if you say store the last 7 backups, you'll have that functionality. All communication, and I kind of glazed over this, and I should specify, all communication between endpoint and server is HTTPS. So it's SSL traffic. So if you have 443 open on your firewall to your management server, or to a remote server inside of the DMZ communicating with the management server, you can actually be anywhere and receive updates and push up backups. I do it a lot over my 3G modem when I'm on the road. So again, that backup is stored on the management server, and it's, again, a policy, and I will show that policy.
Cool. Okay, next question. Since this would most likely be implemented on laptops and other mobile clients, what does the user experience look like with regards to connecting to wireless networks and USB peripherals?
Sure. So from a USB peripheral, there is no change. They plug the device in, and the device is going to work the same way it does today. We actually, from a technical perspective, emulate a USB stack and then pass through the USB devices. Okay, so from a USB device standpoint, it's just going to be standard native Windows, no difference. From a wireless network perspective, and this is something new in 4.0, which I'm going to show shortly, but it's actually pretty exciting. Before, you used to have to go down to the hypervisor to change your wireless network. A lot of our customers today wanted to hide the hypervisor. So in the system tray of Windows, we have an icon that looks exactly like the Windows wireless icon that you click on, and it actually pulls the hypervisor wireless control panel into Windows. So they're still in Windows, they haven't left their desktop, and they can change it from there. The UI is a little different from the Windows UI, and our customers have told us actually that they prefer it. It's a lot more cleaner and easier to understand. But we did pull up our UI into Windows now, so you no longer have to go down into the hypervisor to change it. So it's a near native experience there now.
Perfect, perfect. And a lot of these guys that are listening probably tried out Zen Client. I know a lot of our people are Citrix guys, right? So with Zen Client, it's a little bit different than what you guys have taken that to sort of the next level in experience.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And next question, I like this one. This is a question for me, actually, more or less. I would like to have a copy of this webinar, receive a link to view it later. Absolutely. We are recording it right now, so as soon as we're done, we'll save it, and we'll get the thing online probably tonight. So we'll send that out to you guys that registered, and then it'll also be online on DABCC.com and then probably virtualcomputer.com too. Next question. How do I set up things if an end user has a laptop and another mobile device such as an iPad?
Sure. So we are actually working with the ability now. What you'd have to do in that scenario, to be honest with you, is you would have to give them a desktop someplace inside of your office where they could connect to some sort of broker technology such as RDS, LeoStream, 2X. If you haven't taken a look at 2X, I highly recommend it, to be able to connect back into that. We'll talk more about that in a press release probably over the next few months here and where we're going to head with that technology.
You bet. Okay, yeah. Citrix has a client hypervisor solution, Zen Client, that is a part of their Zen desktop offering. VMware has their VDI checkout feature for laptop users. Can you possibly contrast those options compared to NxTop? So basically, it's the competition question.
Absolutely. I will gladly address that. So first of all, so everybody knows, I did do VMware View and then desktop deployments prior to coming here. Obviously, I am a little bit biased now that I'm here and seeing what we have, but we do have a more superior technology. From a strictly consulting perspective, Zen Client has a very limited HCL. We have a very wide HCL. We run on machines that are going back 4 and 5 years. We don't require VTD. We simply require VTX. We are a power virtualized solution. That is a pass-through solution. The hypervisor is one thing. We can talk hypervisor technology till we're blue in the face. The real value add of any tool, and that's, again, what a hypervisor is the management. That's something that Citrix just doesn't have. They don't have the management that we have. We're a good, 3 years ahead in development on where Citrix is with Zen Client today. We are further along on the management side than they can get to in the next 3 to 4 years, in my opinion. we have a very robust management solution, and that's the big thing. On the VMware View side, the check-in, check-out, as I understand it, that's still experimental. And as I understand it, it takes quite some time to check out. And again, that is also a Type 2. You're checking out into Type 2. You're not checking out into Type 1. So there is obviously a play there. And then again, we have the argument Type 1 versus Type 2. So you got to look at it that way, right? If we're going to check out with VMware View, sure, we're going to check into VMware Player Type 2. If we're going to go to Zen Client, it's got a hypervisor. I will give them some credit on their pass-through for 3D graphics. That was a nice job, but it limited them to under somewhere around 100 laptops out there that could actually support what they're trying to do. We're over 1,000. That's a big thing. And to be able to also say that we can go back 4 or 5 years on hardware, that's also a big thing. Because a lot of people don't want to do hardware refreshes. They want to stretch the additional hardware that they have. So from a competition standpoint, I can point to production customers. I have customers that have looked at both technologies and have really gone with us. And on our website, we actually have case studies highlighting why customers went with us and why we did specific things.
Perfect. And let me add my little 2 cents there, too. From a completely independent, I've done a lot of work with the Zen Client team and then played a lot and worked with the virtual computer team. The VMware View stuff is just not even, like Tom said, not even apples and apples. One is a Type 1, one is a Type 2. So it's not even apples and apples. I find the VMware solution to be a nice VDI solution, but we're not talking VDI. We're talking client, virtualizing the endpoint, actually virtualizing the OS, not putting an OS on top of a physical OS. So let's not even talk about VMware View. That's not even, that's just a whole different breed, right? When it comes down to Zen Client and virtual computer is just advanced. It's their entire company dedicated to it, a bigger team. They've been doing it longer. They've been looking at when Tom gets into the demo and he starts showing you the policies, like he said, it's all about management. And when they show you the policies, it's mind-blowing what these guys do. And anytime I ever talk about Zen Client, I always get 2 or 3 emails saying, well, haven't you checked out NxTop? I'm like, well, of course I have. I'm just telling you about Zen Client at the moment. So, yes, I know it's better. So anyone that's really played with it knows that. And and then also, like Tom said, the big thing is if you've tried Zen Desktop, and I hear this all the time, it doesn't work on my machine, try NxTop. I bet it will. And unless your machine is that old. And if that's the case, you got bigger problems, unfortunately. So we have more questions, but let's continue on, and we'll get to the questions closer to the end. Sound good?
Sure. Sounds great. So we're going to talk a little bit about 4.0. 50-plus additional enhancements. This slide kind of lists them. I'm not going to talk to every bullet point here. I'm just going to show some of the highlights. We use Microsoft Hyper-V today on our management server. That's how we build the VMs. That's how we keep them as VHD format. Now, a VMware-based installation is now capable with our 4.0. You still have to have a Hyper-V server someplace, a low-end Microsoft desktop. It doesn't have to be a large desktop or a largely capable desktop. It could be a low-end desktop that simply authors your VMs. Then the VMware server can be housing your NxTop Center management server. Very easy to do. Again, you simply deploy NxTop inside of VMware, and we communicate over the network back to Hyper-V. So this is kind of nice. For those of you that say I'm 100% VMware, we definitely embrace that. Whereas before we said you had to have, a massive physical Hyper-V server. Now you just need a very slimmed down desktop that can handle Hyper-V to author your virtual machines. We now support Windows Server 2008 virtual machines. Kind of nice. Again, if you want to stand up a 2008 virtual machine inside of your client-side hypervisor here and run Windows 7 and Server 2008 side by side, you have the flexibility to go ahead and do that. And by being able to do that, you can send your workforce out on the road so they can maybe demo a product that needs a server component or something of that nature. You could also, because we allow this, you can have one-to-many patch management as well of Server 2008, which is kind of nice as well, including the built-in rollback stuff that I showed earlier. We got a new green computing initiative that we put in place for those laptops out there. You want to make sure that they're dimming their screen. You want to dictate what they do when they close their lid. You want to put it to sleep after a certain time. You want to talk about the processor performance, either performance or balanced. We now have the ability to push that as a central policy. So if you want to cut down, again, on the power consumption of the endpoint, you can go ahead and do that by setting the policy centrally. One of the really nice features that everybody seems to be talking about who's deploying our stuff right now is we now have an MSI installer. We actually have an MSI and an executable. Before, we had a bootable CD, DVD, bootable USB key from our ISO to install the engine. You had to do it by hand. You could do Pixie if you had Linux Pixie infrastructure. But now, those of you out there with SCCM, you can deploy this via SCCM. I'll take it a little bit of a step further here. Really cool stuff we can do now. We have the capability not only to push it out via SCCM, and wipe out, do a destructive install of the existing operating system and lay down the hypervisor for you. We can now fully automate this in one of two ways. We can do the destructive installation, or we can carve out a portion of free space on the machine and dual boot. So if you ever wanted to roll back to native, you could. You have the flexibility to deploy either dual boot or full destructive installation. Kind of nice. The process is really cool. Just want to walk through it. It actually goes down, pushes down the ISO, carves out a little bit of hard drive space that it needs to explode into, explodes the installer files into that carved out space, reboots the machine into that installed space, then based upon whatever configurations you set on the ini file, it will then go ahead and begin that process. So if you choose a destructive installation, turn on AES 256 disk encryption, register it to this server with this username, it will actually go through and do all of that for you. And by the time the user comes in the morning, the user will sit down, they'll have their brand new image there, they'll be ready to go. We had a customer do about 260 of these machines on their LAN in about 4 hours, leveraging this infrastructure here. Really exciting part of the product now. Some other cool features to touch upon. Go ahead, Doug.
There's one great question here, and just to make sure that you're completely clear about this. And the question is, what is the NxTop engine?
Oh, absolutely. So the NxTop engine is a Type 1 bare metal client-side hypervisor using a derivative of the open source Zen project with our own proprietary kernel that it lays down, again, right on the bare metal itself. And then we use power virtualized drivers in the guest to communicate directly with the hardware.
Okay, perfect. It's basically everything we're talking about.
You got it. You got it. Some other cool 4.0 features that I kind of want to talk about. The ATI support we have. The competition question already came up. What's nice about us, not only do we support Intel like the other guys, and that small subset of NVIDIA that they support, we support more NVIDIA, and we now support ATI Radeon 5000 and 6000 series graphics cards, whereas before we only supported the 3000 and 4000. Now we get the 5000, 6000 out there as well. We support Intel VT, we support AMD V, so we've got a broad support here. But this is kind of cool to throw in here because we were able to get into the higher-end graphics cards out there that ATI has launched. We've done some work with Lenovo. Lenovo has that ThinkVantage function key. We now support that, and we also support their fingerprint reader. One really cool, exciting thing, and this came up earlier, the system tray icon. To launch NxTop Edge Control Panel and configuration, we have a master one, and then we have the network one, just like I talked about. So not only can you connect to the whole control panel to configure memory of your virtual machine or anything like that, but you can also configure the wireless right from within Windows and not have to worry about a thing ever again. So let's go ahead and take a look at the management station and see what we're looking at here.
Excellent.
So I'm going to kind of walk through our management server. As you can see, our management server here is a Java-enabled web application. Okay. Again, all communication to the endpoints is HTTPS. Kind of nice. So we stuck with the web theme here for our management server as well. We can click on our server. We can see a little bit about the server, the description of the server, what's going on, things of that nature. If we click on Active Directory, We can see our Active Directory configuration. What's nice about our Active Directory configuration is we only do LDAP reads and imports. We don't modify the schema. We don't make AD changes. One other thing that's nice about us, when you deploy a virtual machine down to an endpoint, we join it to the domain for you. So it's already done. So literally the end user just sits down and starts to work. So we've configured our Active Directory here, very simple. We've also added in the computer-based DNL where we want the computers to be, objects to be located once we join into the domain. If we go ahead now and take a look at our virtual machines, we've got a whole bunch of different virtual machines here. We've got our corporate Windows 7, which most people on corporate get. We've got our HR machine here that the people in HR receive, our marketing, our sales, another Win 7 Corp, which is the 64-bit or 32-bit version, and then our Windows Server 2008, as well as our old XP corporate. You'll notice on the right-hand side, we've got all kinds of items here, including the start button. I told you we used Hyper-V to build our virtual machine. In actuality, you never have to leave the console to do any work on the virtual machine. So you don't have to learn Hyper-V if you don't know Hyper-V. You don't ever have to set foot into the Hyper-V management console. You can start your virtual machines from here. You can clone them. You can create them. You can attach ISOs. And more importantly, you can version and publish them. Very important because the version publish is when you send your changes down to the endpoint. So we can see in our XP Corp, we've got many different versions. Now, these are all differential disks that get created on top of the first version. So if we look at version 5, we can see that we fixed a domain issue with it. If we look at version 6, we added in some new drivers that we wanted. Unfortunately, version 6 wasn't working out very well, so we backed off to version 5. Now, if we wanted to, if we determine there's a bigger problem here, we could click on version 4. We say we've got to deploy version 4. Version 5 is not working. Like I said, one quick rollback, we click finish, and we are back to version 4. All of those endpoints are going to check in with the server, say, do you have any updates for me? The server's going to say, yes, I do. Revert back to version 4, please. We've got our users. We can assign our virtual machines in one of two ways. We can assign our virtual machines to an individual user. So if you want to take advantage of things like our AES 256 disk encryption or our end user data backup, you'll want to assign your virtual machines to your users. For a training lab, a library, a shared kiosk, you'll want to assign your virtual machines via the computer. We'll show you how to do that as well. So we can see here I've got a user. I can see that this user has 2 VMs assigned to him. I could assign many more if I wanted to. I can see, okay, he's got his Win 7 corporate here. I've got some backups under his backup tab. So I can see that he's got many different backups here if I wanted to revert him back. Okay, so we could roll him back to a differential backup should he need to go back to a different backup. On the computer side, I talked a little bit about being able to assign VMs to computers. So we can create a group of computers that, again, are shared kiosks, such as a training room in this example. And we can assign the virtual machine to that group, and we can see that we've assigned that virtual machine and where it's living. Now, if we look at unknown computers, we see a computer here. This computer has no user. He is a shared kiosk machine that many users can connect to. We can assign him any virtual machine we want to. So let's say we have this in a training room, and we have an HR class coming up on how to teach our new HR people the HR software. We assign and hit save. If we take a look at this particular machine here, we can see it's assigned to our friend Matt Reed. We can see a couple of nice things from our console. We can see what kind of machine it is, if it has VT, what the CPU type is, things of that nature. If we click back on summary, we can see that the disk is not encrypted. We can see the version and the IP address. We can request diagnostics to receive the end user logs back to the server for troubleshooting. We can see some of the disk usage that's out there and some of the things that are happening. We can upgrade the hypervisor from the console. We can also, should there be a problem and this machine is stolen or lost, we can perform a remote kill on this machine. This will do a low-level format of 1s and 0s across the disk until the disk stops functioning. So as long as it has a network connection wherever it is and it communicates with the server will say, please erase your data, which it will begin to do. We talked a lot about policies. There's a policy for most anything inside of the computer. So if we look at the default policy here, this is our hypervisor policy. We can change things such as the check-in time, whether or not we want uploads or downloads to happen on certain networks, broadband modems. Maybe we don't want to do that. One of the really cool features here, if we click on Launcher, we can hide the hypervisor entirely. So the hypervisor never has to be seen by an end user. If they have a single virtual machine, we can completely hide the hypervisor and only show the virtual machine. We also have the ability now to pre-configure wireless networks within your office. So if you wanted to go ahead and configure this, you could say Add, and we can go ahead and say it's a hidden SSID for WPA2 Enterprise maybe, and it's going to be PEEP with generic tokens, so if you have RSA two-factor or something of that nature. So you have the flexibility here, leveraging all the different protocols out there for WPA2 Enterprise to pre-configure an SSID before your users get the machine. So now when they're in the office, they never have to worry about a web key or anything like that. It's all pre-configured for them. The power setting we talked about, very cool. Green computing initiatives, we can go ahead and decide what's going to happen with each machine when it goes to sleep, what the action on lid close is, whether or not we want to dim the display like Windows does, and then again, CPU management. We can actually come in here and say, yes, we want to change this. We don't want to allow the users to change it. And we could say when they're plugged in, we're going to go balanced, and when they're on battery, they're going to go performance, the exact opposite of green computing, but you get the idea. We can perform automated restarts of not only the virtual machine, but also the hypervisor as well as a set schedule. So if you want to do maintenance reboots at midnight or in off-peak hours, you can go ahead and do that as well to make sure the machines are rebooted fully. Then you can also, as part of the hypervisor itself, NxTop engine, we have VNC server embedded inside of the hypervisor. So if your user says, I can't log into my virtual machine, I can't log into Windows, I have this problem, we can actually turn this on and connect. And when we do that, we use any VNC viewer and we can see the user's desktop. So we can see here, I have two VMs running, Windows 7 Corporate, Windows 7 Personal, and NxTop Connect. Excuse me. NxTop Connect is our thinly provisioned PC environment, so we can actually go ahead and click on it here. Actually, it's not started, so we can't. It is a low-level virtual machine that has the Citrix ICA receiver embedded inside of it, as well as terminal services and Google Chrome. So as a user, I could also connect to my XenApp applications. I talked about the wireless settings. I can show you that now. This is our wired, and this is our wireless. So the end user, again, has this flexibility to be able to show this inside of the Windows guest VM without ever having to come down to this level. This panel will actually show up when they click on the hypervisor, the wireless icon inside of the virtual machine. Going back to our management console, we have a whole bunch of other items in here. Again, we have our end user data backup. How long do you want to back up, and how often do you want to be alerted if it doesn't work? And then when do you want to keep it on the server for? Do you want to keep it by count or by time? Again, all policy-driven. And that's block-level differential, so it's very lightweight. The expiration policy is kind of nice. You have a contractor come in for 30 days. You want to go ahead and allow him to use a virtual machine for 30 days and then expire it out. It doesn't delete the VM, but it won't allow it to start anymore. So you could actually turn the policy off after you receive your asset back from that contractor and be able to go ahead and look at what they were doing and things like that. But for them, it expired out after 30 days. We have a lockout policy, which says, hey, if the endpoint doesn't check in with the server for updates at least once a day, lock it out until they do contact the server. Very straightforward there. The USB filtering, we'll take a look at our corporate lock. The USB question came up earlier. We have the capability to be able to block USB devices by device class. In this example, we're saying you can use any USB device except mass storage or another device. So if somebody connects a USB stick here, that's not going to function. It won't even show up. But if they connected a camera or a webcam or a printer, it would work just fine. Then finally, we have our Windows settings here. Granting admin rights, if you want to make the users local administrators, you can do it right from here. And then passing the platform information up into the guest, which is kind of nice. We pass the physical hardware information, the actual physical hardware information, up into WMI. So you can use things like SCCM collections and things like that to be able to read WMI and report back actual hardware. Otherwise, it'll just show, Zen hypervisor. This actually shows the actual hardware of the machine, so you can actually tell, is it a Lenovo T410 or a Lenovo T420 or a Dell E6530, whatever the case may be. And then also we have single sign-on. When the AES-256 disk encryption is turned on, you have to enter your Active Directory password in order to unlock the key that unlocks the disk. So it's a two-key system. Once you enter that Active Directory password, rather than having you relog into Windows, we have our own Gina chain that will actually log you all the way through to your desktop. So you enter your Active Directory password into the hypervisor at boot. That unlocks the key that unlocks the disk. The disk boots up, and then you go ahead and say, okay, pass my credentials all the way through to Windows and allow me to go ahead and be able to go right to my desktop without having to enter my password a second time. Again, end-user feature performance and experience. We're about 95 to 98% near native on the client side itself for end-user performance, which is very, very nice to be in that range. So, Doug, that kind of sums up the whole management console there and how things function. We got to take a little peek at the hypervisor there and running multiple VMs, obviously. And then purely from a, how does it look to the end user who's just in their VM and things like that? I've actually done this entire webinar on my NxTop inside of Windows 7. As you notice, I've gone through my Windows. I've been jumping around through PowerPoint and over to Internet Explorer, down to VNC. My Windows is my Windows. It's very straightforward here. We can see my system tray. We can see that I do have the NxTop Center control panel here, and you can see that I do have the ability to change my mouse, change my network, power management, things of that nature. So it's all there right through the whole thing. So, Doug, any questions? Anything else you'd like to see yourself?
No, that looks great to me. Now, we do have a bunch of questions, but it's also the top of the hour, so we always want to respect our attendees and say to everybody, if you need to jump off, if you have another call, please feel free to do that. But we're going to stick around for a little bit and take these questions, Tom, if you have time. Does that sound good?
Sounds great, Doug.
Perfect. So let's do it. Let's just dive into. We got a bunch of them. So first question is, will the slide deck be available? Absolutely. Tom, you'll send that to me, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I can absolutely make that readily available.
Perfect. So if you want the PPT, you can have that, but we'll also have the recorded version, which is still recording now. So all the Q&A will be in there too. So next question. This is a little long one, so let me try to read this thing, squint my eyes. When you are talking about network upgrade and saying that it is not required for client-hosted IDV, when you roll out updates for the client in the network and you have 1,000 users that get the updates at the same time, won't that reduce the client connection when a user is downloading a file or generally working over the network?
Sure. So the policy that I showed in the very beginning here, and I'll show it again here, bring it up on the screen so everybody can see it here. This policy here under Engine Activity Center says, what is your check-in interval? So our check-in interval right now is 1 minute. So every minute we're checking in with a server with a quick SYN-ACK, do you have updates? 1,000 machines would have to be perfectly started at the exact same time, with the exact same speed of boot up, with the exact same speed of network check-in time for them to all hit the server at the same time. The odds of that happening are excruciatingly slim. Also, we have the ability to set bandwidth control, and we can lay down the ability to say only 10 people can connect to the server for an update at one time. Only X amount of bytes can be used for uploading or downloading. Also, the hypervisor itself on the endpoint knows if the user is doing other work, it throttles back any network usage for updates and lets the user continue to work, and it slowly trickles out the update in the background. We do have customers that have large amount of endpoints deployed on gigabit networks that do not see any performance hit on the network from the updates at all, because, again, it's very rare that you're going to get more than a couple of machines check in at one time. And then also, if you say only X amount can hit at one time, it even lessens it even more. So we have not seen an issue in the field with any deployed customer with that type of an issue on the network.
Nice, nice. You guys have thought of that.
We did, yeah. We spent a lot of time back in the 2.0 timeframe really perfecting network traffic and network usage.
That's cool. That's cool. Next question. Do I still need to buy the same class of client hardware in order to have the same level of performance? Or can I downsize the hardware specs and get an equal performance with IDV?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question, because you got to keep in mind that we are 95 to 98% of native, so that there is a little bit of overhead, about 3% for the hypervisor that's on there. So you've got to keep that in mind. I would recommend going with something around a Core i5, you know, with 4 gigs of memory and, you know, a 7,200 RPM disk. Something around that spec right there. You can't get i3s anymore, otherwise I would say go with an i3. An i5 with 4 gigs of RAM, you know, or some of the Lenovo T420s, the Lenovo X220s. These machines run really, really well with our stuff. I run personally on a Core i5 X201 with 4 gigs of memory, and I run 2 virtual machines myself, and I do not have any performance impact at all. And I only have assigned to my virtual Windows 7 machine that I use daily, my corporate one, 1 gig of memory. It is x86. It is not 64-bit as well. If we go to 64-bit, obviously I'll take advantage of some of that stuff, but I do not have any performance impact to me at all, and I use it probably the same way 90% of the users out there would use it. So I would say if you're in the, you know, those are the lowest end specs that I would go with. But again, you're going to get close to the same performance you would get. So yeah, you would buy about the same hardware.
And, you know, Tom, I bought a machine for Zen Client 1.0, you know, when that was out, what, 3 years ago or something like that. And that machine is obviously, it was the V Pro and what have you, but it's 3 years old, and it's the dual core. I want to say it's a dual core, and you guys runs just fine on it. I'm a typical office worker. I'm not doing high-resolution graphics, video, renderings, and things like that. I do that on different machines, my Mac, actually. But otherwise, I use Office. I do typical work, and it works great on just my dual core.
Excellent. It's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So next question. What about peripheral connections? And you've addressed this one, but maybe it's a bit different. So what about peripheral connections, USB and serial connections? I've seen some hardware-hosted VMs. I've seen some software-hosted VMs have a hard time emulating these as if they were a real computer. In this IDV look and feel the same when connecting printers and serial connected devices?
So actually, for us, we don't have a hard time with it. Again, we emulate up a USB stack with power virtualized drivers. So we're communicating directly with the hardware USB stack inside of that emulation. We pass through the devices. And then on the serial side, actually, we do support, unlike VDI and unlike some other Type 1 client-side hypervisors out there, we do support serial ports. So if you have a serial device that you plug in, we actually pass that directly through to the virtual machine. If you're running multiple virtual machines for the serial ports, we only support the serial port on a single virtual machine. So you, in the hypervisor, will choose which virtual machine to give it to. And again, that's because we're not power virtualizing that. We're actually passing that through. So we don't have issues there. You know, and one of the nice things, too, is from a driver perspective, Windows 7 they've done such a nice job, Doug, with all the printer drivers and things like that out there. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. They've come a long way. I mean, you say printer drivers, and it's like, oh, but it's amazing. They're not it.
Absolutely, it's great.
Yeah, it really, truly is. Okay, about the difference when it comes to type 1, type 2 question, about the difference when it comes to type 1 and type 2 hypervisor. When I start my NxTop, I really thought I was starting a type of Linux OS. When I'm telling people about NxTop and NxTop, I'm always say it is a true type 1 hypervisor compared to others. But can you tell me what makes NxTop a true type 1 hypervisor?
Sure, it's the Zen hypervisor. I mean, we are using the Zen hypervisor. You are not booting up a Linux OS or anything like that. You're booting a Zen hypervisor. So if you downloaded Zen Server, for example, or ESX, vSphere, and you boot that up, that's what you're booting. We've just put some graphical stuff around it to make it look, from a client perspective or client-side perspective, you know, that it's a little more polished. When you think about this, you know, you boot up Zen Server and get to the command prompt. Well, whoop-de-doo. You know what I mean? You still want some sort of a polished GUI so that the user says, oh, okay, I'm booting into something. It's got to have a different look and feel, but it is the Zen hypervisor with our kernel inside of it. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the Zen hypervisor is an open source technology, and a lot of guys use it. Citrix uses it. You guys use it. Oracle uses it. You know, it's all over the place. You guys modified it. Beefed it up, tuned it, you know, and what have you to really do what you guys do. But at the end of the day, it boots up into Zen, and now Zen is a derivative of Linux in a way, right? I mean, it's you know, so you know, when you think you see Linux, well, yeah, you're seeing Zen, and you'll see that on any sort of Zen distro, or build or whatever you call that. So absolutely, it's definitely a type 1. Do applications that are installed after the IDV is installed go into the local BHD file?
So no, they don't. You would install all of your applications actually into the golden image that gets pushed down. Because of the snapback technology, if a user does install their own application, it does snap those back because they get installed on that differential disk. However, inside of the console here, if I go back to virtual machines, we can see two types, a shared here and a custom. A custom virtual machine does not have snapback enabled on it. It also does not have one-to-many patching, but it does give you the flexibility to install your own applications inside of it and things like that.
Cool. Next question. How do you deal with clients interested in BYOD, bring your own device?
Yeah, the conversation comes up, Doug. It really does. I'm not going to lie and say we never hear it. But once you start to talk about it and people start to weigh the pros and cons of it, they back away from it. We haven't really seen a successful BYOD deployment yet where it's gone company-wide. You see pockets of it, but you don't see it full-blown company-wide. And when you think about the administrative nightmares around, you know, here's a $1,500 or $2,000 check, go ahead and go buy your own device. Somebody comes in with a Sony Vaio laptop, or I shouldn't pick on those guys too much, but like a Toshiba Tecla that nobody's ever seen. Now the IT department's going to end up supporting a lot of that. What about PC management? You know what I mean? And that's if their pain point is to manage their PCs more effectively and to cut down on operational support costs of their desktops, we're the perfect play there. You know, if they're going to start to look at BYOD and they really want to go that avenue, generally they end up calling us back shortly thereafter and saying, we'd really like to take a look at your stuff. And we never really ask why. I assume it's because BYOD really hasn't gotten the legs. It's kind of like VDI. It's been this big mythical thing that nobody seems to really be able to really grasp.
I agree with that. But you guys also have the technology. Let's say if you were doing BYOD and I can buy what I want, I could actually slide your solution into my machine.
Doug, for some reason you were all broken up on my phone.
Oh, my Lord. Well, that's horrible. So let me say that again. So let's say I was in a company that does BYOD, and I say, you know, I want this because I want the benefits of this, right? This is great. It's going to back up all my stuff. I don't have to worry about things, you know, blah, 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 right? And I get the same performance, and, you know, I got a peace of mind here. And so I could actually have my own image, and you guys could sort of slide NxTop underneath it, can't you?
We can't slide underneath it, but we can slide next to it. That is a correct statement. We can dual boot it. What that will do is it'll carve out a section of partition space and install us there. Then the user has their personal space they can boot into, or they can boot into NxTop when they're on the corporate network. We can do that, yes.
Cool. Yeah, and that's a great way also, guys. We still have we haven't lost anybody. Only 5 people, I think, have left us, Tom. So we're going to keep doing our Q&A. That's great. You all never see that, but you're doing a great job with these questions. So yeah, you know, what do I say? Let's continue. So we did the BYOD question. Next, we have a mandate to encrypt all Win 7 laptops. Oh, this is great. At our college, can IDV handle encrypted images? We've not had any success unicasting encrypted images with any tools we've tried. Oh, man, you're going to love this stuff.
So, actually, we can definitely help with that. We include as part of the product AES 256 disk encryption. So you would actually no longer encrypt the image. We encrypt the entire disk, and then when you lay the image down on top of us through our management server, that is fully encrypted as well. It's all part of the product. We're actually hearing more and more about mandates for encryption in most places we go. And I don't know a customer that doesn't encrypt their laptops anymore with our stuff. But it is AES 256 disk encryption. We can definitely solve that problem for you. We have a lot of customers doing that today, and I'd be more than happy to accept your personal phone call if you want to call me here at VCI.
Yeah, and in not just from the encryption standpoint. I mean, obviously that's huge, and it's just sort of out of the box, right? But just client virtualization in general is just perfect for schools because you can manage everything. You can control all those policies. And if you have to re-provision a box to a new teacher or their, a new class, a new semester, you can just do that on the flip of a button, right? Or the flip of a switch, click of a button. I mean, this is just the ideal solution for those dynamic environments. You know what I mean, Tom?
Big use case, Doug. Absolutely, is all those classrooms, those labs. We have a couple of universities that are using us right now today for those labs, and every semester you hear the horror story. I've seen it, firsthand. I'm sure you have, Doug, when you walk into a university or high school and you see that summer intern in there popping a Cronus or Ghost CDs in every machine and booting them up, trying to re-image them. All that goes away. You could re-image the machines during the day while the students are still there and they're not on them, and it would be done and ready to go. Or the best part is they can't mess them up because it snaps back to its original golden state. So in actuality, we can cut down on all that re-imaging.
Yep, and all the viruses. Believe it or not, prior to coming to Citrix, so this is a long time ago now, I did a lot of work in schools in northwest Iowa, the rural schools, and it's amazing what you see in these. Universities are a lot better, obviously, but just schools in general, but yet they face the same issues with kids trying to hack the machines, the mass amounts of re-imaging and redeployments, new apps. We digress, but yeah, it's a great solution for those dynamic type of environments. It really is. Okay, next question. How does it work if you need to install custom applications for certain users? For example, only 12 users out of 200 need Microsoft Project.
So in that scenario, there's first of all, the short answer and the best answer is application virtualization. I highly recommend it. I know, Doug, you and I have had this conversation many times. It's a great complementary tool to this whole scenario.
It's everything, right? I mean, you want to use it.
You really do. You really do. You really do. We have something on the roadmap to address that exact feature. So I think everybody's going to see something coming out shortly from us that will address that exact problem without having to use app virtualization. But the answer today, I always recommend app virtualization. Microsoft App V is a great one. And the nice part about App V is it actually comes with Microsoft Desktop Optimization Pack, which is part of most people's volume licensing for their desktops, and they may not even know that they have it.
Yep, you got it. You got it. No, it works great. I mean, that's definitely, you want to virtualize everything. Then you create these environments that are basically, for lack of a better term, and not in a derogatory way, a throwaway environment, right? So you can tear it down and build it up with a click of a button, right? So you can virtualize your OS, you virtualize your application. That's what bothers me when people don't get client virtualization. They don't get intelligent desktop virtualization. They want to virtualize everything except the desktop. It's like, wait a second, guys. Don't forget this piece. It's the most important piece, right? Okay.
Exactly.
So does all the endpoint need to be the same in terms of OS? What if there is a mix of XP, Vista, and Windows 7?
You can create as many images as you want. You can deploy XP, you can deploy Vista, you can deploy 7, you can deploy them all side by side if you have enough hard drive space. We lay down, we're type 1, so we lay down our own, hypervisor, and then whatever image you want to build up, you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, it almost sounds like he might be confusing you guys with the Type 2, thinking
That's what it sounds.
Yeah, so, this is, the thing to remember about this is Type 1. You install Virtual Computer Solution, and then you install your virtual machines. They could be anything, right? I mean, it just doesn't matter. The same as, any virtualization solution. Okay, next question. Do I have to use a management server, or can I install on a laptop and manage it standalone?
You can do that, actually. You can install the hypervisor on a standalone machine and not manage it, absolutely. Like I said earlier, though, a hypervisor is a hypervisor. The real benefit is in our management solution. But you can deploy the endpoint, and you won't have the one-to-many patching. You won't have the policy capability or any of that, but you could just turn on Windows updates.
Cool. Can I use your solution with some teleworkers who use their own laptops that already have their own OS and apps installed on their laptop? The main objective is to give them all the tools they need in a virtual desktop and protect our company's IP by keeping it in a virtual desktop and preventing copying and pasting it to their host desktop.
You could dual boot it, yes. You could absolutely set it up so that you carve out a partition on their machine, deploy it there, carve out some free space, deploy the hypervisor in that free space, and then deploy your image down there. You could do that. And then obviously you'd want to take advantage of expiration and remote kill, two of the features I showed you out of the manager console, where if that employee quits, gets terminated, you can just poison pill it to go ahead and kill off that machine, or you can simply expire the VM so they can't get access to it.
Perfect, perfect. Next question, and this is not a question. This adds to, in fact, he says, just to add something about to the Zen Client NxTop discussion, and then he goes on to say, it's a lot cheaper with NxTop solution as well. The computers that's required to run Zen Client are a lot more expensive compared to NxTop. So thank you for that. We don't even have to pitch it, right?
It's definitely taken off out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love seeing this because, come on, it's the way to go. Are the COM-port assignments the same? Are the COM-port assignments the same look and feel as the standard PC? This referenced my first question regarding printer/serial setup.
Yeah, I mean on the serial setup, we simply pass it through, so they look the exact same up inside. Yeah, it's just pass through.
Cool. We're doing on time. Oh, there's still a lot of people, so let's keep plugging through. Do you still have some time, Tom?
Yeah, I've got a hard stop in about 8 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So, do you support deploying Windows XP and 7? Yes, you do.
Yes, absolutely. One little thing. We support, so I'll walk through this briefly because we didn't really cover it, but Windows 7, Windows XP, Windows Vista 32-bit, Windows 7 64-bit, Server 2008 64-bit. So those are the flavors we support there.
Cool. How can I can you get a trial version? Absolutely. Just head over to virtualcomputer.com. On the main page, it's a big button that says download. download it and play with it. And like Tom said, you can actually slide this thing on the side too. So if you don't want to destroy your PC, you can still play with the thing if you have a bunch, if you have some free space there. So,
and I do have on the dual boot stuff like Doug just mentioned, I do have the documentation on how to do that. I'm not sure if it's up on the website. It's a step-by-step guide. Anybody can reach out to me. I'm not sure if my email is up on the website, Doug, but it's just tr@virtualcomputer.com. I'm more than happy to provide that documentation for you.
Perfect. And maybe we can just put that with the download too.
Yep, absolutely.
Video. So it's a great way. I mean, obviously, there's no reason not to destroy your machine, to reformat your machine or grab a different drive and try the thing. But if you're, if you just want to try it and need to and don't want to ruin what you have, you can still do that. With a deployment in a global enterprise environment, is it possible to have multiple distributed servers which house the golden images to allow more of a regional distribution model?
Absolutely, and that's exactly how all of our global enterprises deploy us today. We have what's called a remote caching server. The computers or endpoints register to a specific server, so they would register to the server that is closest to them, or that that you want them to be assigned to, and then only that server communicates with the central server and receives the differentials from him, and he services the users that are assigned to him. But everything is actually out of one management console. So when you connect to a single management console, that's how it'll function.
Awesome. And then here's a question. Is it like ESX but for clients? Yes, exactly. Except for it has a lot more because clients has a lot more. It has different. The server ESX manages replication and backups and all this other stuff, right? Where this is manages policies and users and peripherals and all those type of things. Anything to add to that, Tom?
No, that's a great description. ESX for your endpoints. That's one of our sales guys actually uses that exact analogy. That's perfect.
I like it. There's been a lot of interest in this webinar today. Maybe we'll have to do another one and dive even deeper. So anybody out there would like us to do another one, email me. Let me know, dbrown@dabcc.com, and let us know what you want us to dive into if you wanted to go to a specific thing, because I love doing this. I love what Virtual Computer's doing. Really like working with Tom and the gang, too. So, on that note, we'd be happy to dive deeper. Also, visit virtualcomputer.com and download the trial and reach out to them, too. They'll do personal demos with you, won't you?
Absolutely. We definitely will, Doug, and I'm more than happy, again, to provide my contact information. It's just tr@virtualcomputer.com, and anyone is more than happy to feel free to email me any questions, anything you want to talk about. If you want a one-on-one personal demo, more than happy to do that as well. If you want to talk about how it can fit into your particular use case, we're more than happy to do that as well.
Perfect. So on that note, let's just call this a webinar. And Tom, thank you so much. I've done a lot of these, and we've done a couple now, and this is one of my favorites. So I love this technology. Can't you tell? So someday we're going to be we are already proving. There's a lot of articles out there nowadays talking about VDI is just not what they thought it was. Duh. And IDV is definitely need to be looked at. And you guys have, by far, have the best solution on the market today. So thank you so much for your time, and I've really enjoyed it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, guys. And again, thanks, everyone, for joining. Can't believe how many people stuck around with us. So we'll get this posted up to the abcc.com tonight. And on that note, thank you guys all, and we'll be chatting with you soon. Take care, everybody.